they will not run for Senate. Some 34 seats are up for grabs in 2020. 22 are currently held by Republicans, and Democrats will need to pick up at least 3 or 4 seats to be in the majority. But why aren't more 2020 Democratic hopefuls willing to step up? Joining us now to discuss is Siraj Hashmi, the writer and editor for the Washington Examiner, Michelle Goldberg, columnist at the New York Times and an MSNBC contributor, and back with me are Danielle and Matt. Welcome, guys. Okay, so Michelle, what is it about, why is it just posturing at this point, why they're saying, no, 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 we're just running for president, we are not running for the Senate, sort of like Marco Rubio did way back when?
I mean, I wish that that was the case. I would be really pleased if that was the case, because it's so frustrating given that, you know, these races are going to be pivotal into whether whoever the Democratic president is, or whichever Democrat has a shot at the presidency, is not going to be able to exercise any sort of meaningful power if Mitch McConnell is still in charge of the Senate. So, you know, I desperately wish that, for example, Beto O'Rourke would have taken up the invitation issued by the Houston Chronicle when they said, you know, please come back, your state needs you, run for Senate, right? That would have been the perfect exit for him to say, you know, yes, my state is asking me to come home, and who am I to say no? You know, so many of these candidates, Steve Bullock, I think, is from the governor of Montana, is extraordinarily unlikely to be the Democratic nominee. You know, why he won't run for Senate is inexplicable. And I look at this and I can only think that this is how much Mitch McConnell has broken the Senate, right? That the Senate used to be, you know, a plum job, and now it's just frustration and gridlock and misery.
to put a positive note on all of it. Siraj, as you know, John Hickenlooper last week said that he was dropping out of his presidential bid, but he already ruled out a Senate run in June. Watch and listen.
A couple of the papers in your home state have called on you to drop out of this race and run for Senate. What do you think about that?
Well, if the Senate's so good, how come all those senators are trying to get out? The Senate doesn't attract me at this point. It just doesn't attract me.
Siraj, what do you make of that response? You get a sense that he may regret saying that, or that might be included in some campaign ad if he should run.
I can tell you that the National Republican Senatorial Committee will probably use that in an ad run to try to say that John Hickenlooper isn't interested in running or representing you in the Senate, so why should you vote for him? Vote for Cory Gardner instead. Wow, that was a real slip-up right there. But looking at the Senate picture here, Cory Gardner is actually very vulnerable in the state of Colorado, because that's a state during presidential elections that always slips or tips blue. And so if you get a strong candidate at the top of the ticket running against Trump, the stronger the likelihood is that, say, someone like John Hickenlooper could win the Senate race in Colorado, because usually a high turnout of Democrats in down-ballot races would only help with a strong candidate at the top of the ticket.
Yeah, he's won twice there statewide in Colorado, popular governor there at the time. Matt, I want to get your take on the state of Maine. Republican Senator Susan Collins still has not announced her re-election bid, and some late polling recently has taken Maine from lean Republican to toss-up. What are the chances that she does try to run again for re-election, or decides not to?
Yeah, I think they're pretty good. I think Senate Republicans are expecting her to run again. Look, I think she was shaken up by the experience. Well, look, I mean, Maine is obviously a tough state. I don't think she's vulnerable. She's been able to have tremendous electoral success in Maine over her career. She has her own identity. She's not tied to Trump in the way that some Washington Republicans are. And she's moderate, and she's demonstrated that over the years on a range of issues, at times frustrating even Senate Republicans. So, look, it's ultimately up to her. The decision to retire is a deeply personal one. At some point, you decide you've done enough. You want to go out and do something else. I do think she'll run again. That is the expectation. I do think her race will be competitive, but I don't think she's at risk of losing.
Okay, well, let's talk about neighboring Maine, or Massachusetts, rather, the Bay State, because this I find completely fascinating. The Boston Globe reporting just yesterday that Massachusetts Representative Joe Kennedy is considering a primary challenge next year against Democratic Senator Ed Markey, but a spokesperson, I should say, for the Kennedy clan there, told Politico on Friday that he's running for re-election in his district. That statement comes as multiple reports say that Kennedy is actually eyeing this run against Markey. Why? What do you make of this?
I really have no idea. I think that that is incredibly interesting. People love the Kennedys. They love the dynasty. It gives them kind of like this resurgence, this nostalgia that for whatever reason, everyone in America is desperate for at this moment in time. I don't really know what to make of it.
Barney Frank, Michelle, among those who was saying after he heard those rumors, he's like, why would we spend tens of millions of dollars to primary somebody to have a debate where you're talking about the same thing?
Well, yeah, that's what I don't understand. I mean, there are a lot of senators that you could imagine a progressive primary challenge to, but Markey is a very progressive senator, right? He's a co-sponsor of the Green New Deal resolution with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I can't think of any issue except maybe impeachment that he's going to be on the wrong issue.
Is that Suraj?
Democrats need a rising star. They're so reliant on a lot of these old politicians, Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders. They need another bench to basically rise up through the ranks. Ed Markey, we probably know that he probably knew a primary challenge was on the way, which made sense for him to align himself with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on the Green New Deal, so at least he can look a little bit more progressive. Kennedy is a familiar and very nostalgic choice that a lot of Democrats would rather choose coming up. And obviously, Kennedy is probably wanting to get onto the Senate so that he can eventually make a run for president.
Yeah.
I mean, it would seem as if it's a little bit of a bloodbath, a family battle right there with it.
I don't think that now's the time to do it.
And there were many people.
The other thing is that if all goes well, you know, Markey, I think, and Kennedy have endorsed Elizabeth Warren, or I could be wrong about Kennedy, right? So there could very well be another Massachusetts Senate seat opening up.
Absolutely. And a lot of people have been talking about Kennedy as a possible running mate as well. So it's an interesting tactic within some Democratic circles. Interesting tactic indeed. All right. So in the meantime, Michelle, you have the 7 Democrats who have now filed to run against Senator John Cornyn there in Texas. But no Democrat has won a statewide office there in Texas since 1994. I kind of feel, do you kind of feel as if a lot of people think of Texas as fool's gold for Democrats, where they feel as if it's moving?
Well, so I would be tempted to say that, but the people who really know Texas, who've been skeptical in the past of the idea that Texas could be becoming a purple state or could be going blue, they seem to think Republicans there are pretty vulnerable, right? And you've seen this kind of collapse of support for the president in the suburbs. The demographic change means that the possibility is there in the future. Whether or not this is the year, it does seem like, you know, Republicans certainly seem, you look at the exodus of Texas Republicans from Congress, right? They clearly feel like their prospects are not great.
Yeah, they're calling it the Texodus. Matt, you're right there in the city of Austin, Texas. What's the feel that you're getting from the state?
Well, I think the large Democratic field against Cornyn does suggest that Democrats think there's an opportunity. But that large field also plays to Cornyn's advantage. We're highly likely to have a primary runoff. So the primary is in March. The runoff would be in May. That would give the Democratic nominee 4.5 months to raise money and become a general election candidate. Cornyn has $9 million in the bank. He was able to watch Cruz's very close call last year, and he's been preparing, running the best re-election campaign of any Senate Republican, staffing up early, raising money, working the state aggressively. So, no, I don't think Cornyn is vulnerable, and 2020 is going to be different than 2018 was in Texas. Michelle's right to point out the suburbs. There is some concern there. Beto flipped 5 key suburban counties in the Austin area, the Dallas area, and the Houston area. Straight ticket voting's over, and Beto O'Rourke and his $80 million will not be in place in 2020 like they were in 2018. So the action is going to be in the 8 congressional districts that are going to be competed in, not, I think, at the statewide level.
At least 8 congressional districts. We'll see how many others declare for an exit out of Texas. Suraj Hashmi, Michelle Goldberg, and Matt Makovic, thank you. Danielle, please stick around if you don't mind.